Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for another Teach-In Tuesday where we come to you live just to have a conversation. The idea is that we hope to catch the busy parent who, may not receive our weekly newsletter or bi-weekly newsletter, may not have the time to, attend a virtual meeting. So we thought that we could bring um, the information to the virtual space, right? We know that folks, may be working at the desk and maybe into tune in no matter where you are on the go. My name is Natasha. I am the director here at Raise Your Hand. I'm forever a parent organizer and really appreciate this space to come in and chop it up with the staff. And in a very short order, where we'll have guests on who will be subject matter experts or folks who are doing work around the community who are going to be joining us to share their wisdom and call to action. Because what we ultimately believe is it's important that if you are a CPS parent, community member, neighbor, educator, student, that we would love to share information that feels relevant to you. So today's show is going to be focused on the LSC elections. Yay! That will happen tomorrow at elementary school, tomorrow being April 10th, the same day as report card pickup. And so then, of course, on Thursday, April 11th, is when LSC elections will happen at the high school level. Um, just a little bit about myself for those of you who may not have been on in previous sessions or know who we are. We do start out with just a brief introduction of who we are, and of course a little bit of history about um, how we are, have roots in CPS. I'm a CPS K through 12 alum. Elementary school, O'Toole, attended Morgan Park, graduated from Corliss, and often find myself tying back to my own CPS experience into what we currently see. There's definitely some persistent equity gaps. We felt compelled as a family to transfer my daughter in her high school career for options to have more options around science classes. And so I am razorly focused around the inequity that we see in curriculum in our schools. And that's one of the things that keeps the fire in my belly for this work. So I'll land there. Chinella, Kendra, over to you.
Hey y'all, my name is Chinella. I am the LSC parent organizer here at Raise Your Hand. I am a mother of 7. I still have 2 that are in CPS. I grew up on the South Side. I went to elementary school at Gillespie and then graduated from Harlan High School. um, and many of my children, when they were younger, they attended Gillespie Elementary, Frank L. Gillespie Elementary as well. And not knowing, like looking back and not realizing that my kids didn't have what they should have had in their school, and then also realizing that I didn't either because um, my children had literally some of the same social science books that I had, the exact same books with the exact same pages ripped out, and things like that. So like just looking back at things like that and just realizing that it's just been a continuous disinvestment in our Black and brown schools is why I'm here. And why I want to educate people on their rights and the power that they have, especially within the LSC. I'll pass it to Kendra.
Hey y'all, I'm Kendra, Raise Your Hands parent organizer, and same. I'm born and raised in Auburn Gresham. Attended Harvard Elementary School. I am a Lynn Bloom student. um, I I had the experience I had with the schools is I'm a mom of 7 as well and a grandma. And I like Chanella said, the schools haven't changed in all those years. So um I've had kids who went to school on the north side, and then I've had my children enrolled in selective enrollment schools on the south side, and I also have children who have went to neighborhood schools in the south side. So in those three components, they are all different, and just with noticing my passion would always be to go for what's right. The things you don't know, you don't talk about. You can't fix things if you don't think they're broken. And we got to stop being used to just accepting what they giving to our kids. And that's my biggest thing. Like, I'm not going to accept it. I'm a mom of 7, and I only have 3 grandkids right now, and I know it's plenty more coming. And grandma gonna fight till there's no more fight in her. So that's where my passion comes from.
Powerful. Thanks for sharing. And I say powerful because, again, we talk about this, amongst ourselves offline, but it's definitely interesting when we talk about our why, that oftentimes we are reflecting on our own CPS experiences for our children. And I see, really carry that through the relationships we build with parents and LSCs, right? Who come to us for office hours to talk through their issues and concerns. And a lot of this experience comes from, letting folks know this is not new. You are not alone, right? And we can really draw on the, that experience to really push for how do we find the policy. We talk about this a lot, right? How do we find what's in the black and white? What are the areas and the ways that we can push for parents to be decision makers and at that table to be able to shift the culture, right? We are in that moment. So excited for today's conversation because y'all know I geek about local school council. For those that, okay, I see y'all laughing, got jokes. I really see local school councils, my own experience informs me that a parent on an LSC can really make a difference. And I say not an individual parent, but parent majority local school councils, when you work with the educators in the building and the community members and the principal, and you can have, the balance of authority and power in dealing with the issues at your school, you really can get some things done. In our experience, we were new to CPS, right? And I say to the local school council sort of process. And when we ran, we really just read the policy and the school code and pushed for accountability. When there were process gaps and things that we felt like endangered our children or kept them from the full opportunity of an equitable education, we called it out and we were relentless. And so in very short order, we saw things turn around. And like I've said before, that school I'm excited. It warms my heart for the environment that the students have today because we dared as parents and community members working with our close relationships with the educators in the building was clutch. What was really key to really moving the needle, and excited to share that experience with folks who feel disempowered in ways. So yeah, off my soapbox, we're going to talk about LSC elections, but it's also a critical moment, right, in the LSC sort of calendar of things. This is when I believe yesterday schools received their budgets. This is a new year. There's no longer, or the district moved away from the student-based budgeting. So it is a critical time during the year where LSC should be doing some things. Chanala, you want to jump in and talk about what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that should be coming up with your LSC is the CIWP. And y'all know I am horrible with acronyms. Continuous improvement work. All right. So yeah, so um the CIWP should have been approved for the 2024 through 26 school year. And so with the budget coming in, oh yeah, Natasha, you're gonna have to help me on this one because I like the way that you explain how the budget and the CIWP work together. I'm not there yet. But that's why the CIWP is so important. Since the budget just came out, you want to use that CIWP and the improvements and the things that you have in there, and kind of like match it against the budget to make sure that everything checks out. You know, like when you're just doing like when you're doing a working a job, and you know you have checks to make sure that you're on task or completing things. The CIWP matching it up with the budget is one of those ways to ensure that the school is doing what they said that they are going to do. So yeah, they should you should be having that meeting somewhere. Well, you should be receiving the CIWP implementation plan to review and approve between like right now and the beginning of May. I do not, the dates have been changing because I believe last year was like May 11th. Natasha, please correct me for if it's still the 11th this year. But yeah, we'll stop there.
You got it. You own it. You explained precisely what it is. The budget and the CIW. Think about this. The reason for schools and the academic center is to meet the need of every child that is in that building, right? Whether it is what they need in the hallways, of course, by extension, of course, above all, in the classroom. So it covers social emotional needs, trauma informed. I would just say social emotional needs, but of course, what comes up for me is the trauma informed supports that our young people need in the building. And of course, it talks about on track. Whether at the elementary level or high school, a CIWP is going to tell the school, it tells the story of not just the story of what the needs are, but goals in terms of what is needed. So in order to make that academic plan happen and a success, you must put dollars to it, right? So that is why the CIWP and the budget are married. Oftentimes we go to, Kendra can talk about this, we'll go to LSC meetings and we'll hear things that come up for parents that there's a need to prioritize what might be in that, what I'm sure is in that CIWP. However, the budget transfers that we hear are things that are frivolous and unconnected to those hallways and classrooms, right? And so, you know, we feel strongly. Kendra, if you want to talk a little bit about some of that and like why we like extend that to like why we have the LSC training and other opportunities to refresh training and memory on what why we need to make sure we have a duly informed and thorough budget and CIWP process.
Absolutely. So what I've experienced and what I've seen in multiple schools in like the last 2 years, every meeting has a line of budget transfers and on the agenda every time. And it's I just think they just in case. It's like their I don't know the word I want to use, but like their formal agenda that, you know. So in those meetings, I've noticed that in the budget transfers, the administrator gives a bunch of numbers and everybody sit and say, you know, I want to move this amount of money from this line to this line. And everybody is just like, oh, okay. And we don't question it. And I feel like, what do we have? What was the budget put into play for if this is what's going to go on every month? And the things that, like you said, frivolous, I've seen money being moved, and then the next month, a bunch of T-shirts are being passed out, or hoodies are being passed out, or trips to the skating rink are passed out, and it's like, as attendance incentives, but you use the money for the buses. And it's, just things like that. We want our kids to have all those great things, but I would rather see that money being used for a tutor, for a math program, for things that will benefit them. And if they align it with what's in the CIWP, the continuous improvement work plan, I'm sorry, if they align that, then we wouldn't have this money to move around if they actually did those things. I've noticed over the years that it's almost like a puppet show, because we are not, most LSCs are not properly trained so that they don't know. So they just, it goes with what sounds good. And of course, like, we want our kids to have a party, but I would rather you have a reading party. I mean, it's cool to have a pizza party, but what about this reading party? So, it's just things like that I've noticed with and I can talking about the continuous improvement plan. Parents are not part of that process, and they should be. They do not include parents in that process, and they should. I know on paper, or what people see, is that the LSC chairperson has signed off on it, but them signing off on it don't mean that they talk through the process, and we have to get in tune with that. Like, I would want to be a part of. I might not know, all the fancy words or all the programming, and work with your parents, to work with the staff, work with the teachers that's on there to learn these things. And I guess that's what the training that's what the training entails. Like, we have to keep constantly being trained. I am a certified LSC trainer. That's a plug. So if you want your LSCs trained on that, you reach out to us, and we can make those things. We can get some stuff together to properly train those, to give those the budget training and the CIWP training. And I'm rambling, but yeah. So I want to, just say that that's the problem. We need to be trained so that we'll know how to align these two things. I'm gonna be quiet. Go
ahead. Kendra, my beef when I was on the LSC at my son's school was they wanted money to have a silent party for the teachers. And I love teachers. I appreciate everything that they do, but it was like, really? Like, no. And I think that that's why it's really important for us to continuously be trained if we're sitting on the LSC, because, things change, and we want to make sure that we know what's going on. The first LSC that I was on, we ran as a slate, and so we didn't know anything, but we happened to have a principal that I would say that I'll speak for myself. Thought that principal had our students' best interests, and it wasn't until I started really like looking at all the monies that was being transferred that I'm like, no, this is not making sense. And then for the principal to not, if we should be working together, a lot of CPS language is just too difficult to understand. That's the truth. And, so I'm expecting the principal to break stuff down for us. And it was like, no. And it was really difficult because I was on the LSC with my son. He was the student rep, and he was a senior. And so they trying to move money for, senior stuff. And the adults like, no. And he always had his own mind, and he voted however he wanted to vote. I didn't want to sway his vote, but I really wanted the youth that were on that LSC to understand why why we were against those transfers. Because yeah, we want y'all to have fun, and we want y'all to enjoy, especially your last year. But if things are not going right academically, if you need more counselors, you need more after school programs, it's other more important things that the money can be spent on, then that's what it needs to be spent on.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, to get the parents that not just on that, those 6 parents on the LSC voice matters, but we need to draw more parent participation in those meetings, so that just the things that they're hearing and seeing that might not sound right. I remember I was at a school that had a Jordan party, and I was absolutely appalled. Like, what about those kids that don't have Jordan? So what, you gonna use money to buy Jordan? So, it's just things like that that we can't waste time or money on, when it's so many things that's really needed in these schools.
And that's where an opportunity where it's always good that if you have, some schools in our city are very fortunate, right, where they have friends of organizations that can raise, or that raise in the 6 figures.
Mm-hmm.
There are schools that, could really benefit from, small donations. I know when I was on an LSC, we had someone in the community that I think lived owned a home 2 blocks away from the school, that really cared about the curb appeal of the school. And once a month gave a $100 donation to the school, sort of earmarked for campus beautification. That's what solidarity looks like, So if your budget, doesn't allow you to, like you said, we want to focus on, we want fun. Fun is mandatory in order to, I think it's a part of learning. But at the same time, it's sort of a call to action to be creative, and really extend beyond the school. That's why it's important to let the community know when you're having your LSE meetings. I tell folks all the time, you block your blessings if your LSE doesn't do enough to advertise well where those meetings are and how the public can participate. Even though we are beyond the limitations of the pandemic, with meetings were strictly virtual, schools are encouraged to continue hosting their meetings hybridly. There are several schools that host theirs on YouTube, or you can't. I don't know that you can comment to public comment on watching, but at least you can engage. And again, I think the reason why we got that support from that neighbor is because she understood that we had a strained budget. And again, made sure that the outside of the school, she probably understands that the school's grounds benefits her bottom line or her equity in her home. Right. So again, being creative, you can do grants, you can do fundraisers. It doesn't have to be 6 figures. But again, if $500 would get a sneaker party or something like that, then let's be, this is where all hands on deck is really important. And LSCs being able to provide that type of bridge to the school community is just really a solid. I wanted to talk a little bit about, since we brought it up, how folks can, how everyone can see, let me see here, how folks can see where their CIWP is, and then we'll get into some of the elections. So here I am on the cps.edu, the front page. I think it's nice to see this highlighted. I hadn't seen this in previous years. This is the Deputy Director of Local School Council Relations, Myra Winding, and they have here that you can vote in the LSC election. We'll come back to that. So if you are a parent, community member, and you're curious to know where to find a school CIWP, or continuous improvement work plan, you will go to cps.edu, click on schools, you want to go to find a school. And then you can enter a school name. Kendra Chinella, do you have a school name you want to pop? Should we look at?
You could do Fernwood.
Fernwood. Fernwood Elementary. We see that this is a school in the far south side of our city, the Roseland community. This is a school that is in, at least as of the last accountability status, in good standing, 265 young future leaders in the building. It tells you who's the school leadership, the school hours, and then it tells you the demographics and statistics of the school. But for the purpose of sharing this screen, I just want to quickly show you how there's quite a bit of transparency in terms of how to see what's happening in the school, what the needs are. So if you'll see here, I just clicked on what is a tab for downloads. And this is where you can find a lot of relevant school documents. So you would then scroll to this list that kind of falls under other. You're going to look for continuous improvement work plan. And we're going to look at this most current one, which is 2024 to 26. And so in here is where no matter the school you are looking for in the district, you would be able to pull up their current CIWP and read through the goals, right? In them, you should be able to see who was a part of that CIWP process. I can tell you that it is a best practice to see when there are parents and non-LSE members are even available to be selected by the principal to serve in this capacity. Before I was on an LSE or decided to run, I was a part of the CIWP process and can bring things from a parent perspective, extending the school to home, experience about what my child needed. And I thought it was really powerful. And this was one of the first sort of tastes into participatory decision-making that I had as a parent. And so I think it really informed me running for LSE to further be a part of the change that we needed to see. So again, no matter what school you are looking for, you would go to that website, follow those, sort of, click around, you'll see where it says downloads, and then you click on the most current CIWP and see what is in there. Kendra, is there anything that you wanted to highlight here or Trinella in terms of the CIWP, or should we can land there if y'all don't have anything, it's just fine.
I'm good. We can land there.
Okay. So we wanted to share with y'all for the purpose of I hope that you all can see my screen. I'm not sure that you can. Can y'all see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So during the LSE elections, which again, we mentioned this sort of at the top, is I'm going to go off camera for just a bit. It looks like my internet is a little bit intermittent so that you can hear my voice and make sure I don't lose connection. We wanted to go a little bit into some of the lesser discussed things about the local school council election, things you might not know, but you should know. So we really wanted to create a presentation and make a thing about it, but we also thought it'd be good for you to be able to kind of understand where you can get this information in the palm of your hand. So we wanted to use the LSC election guide, which is essentially no different than what you would find in our municipal elections on the city's election board of elections, right? So local school council elections have to be democratic, equitable, and of course with integrity. And so it is important to be informed, right? And so we're going to talk and have a discussion around things that is in here for you all. And then we're going to drop a link in the chat so that you'll be able to tap into some of this information. Let's see. This is a large document. So what we typically do is we do a keyword search. Kendra, Chinella, lead me here. Where are we going? What's a keyword and a topic that we wanted to discuss?
Poll watcher.
Okay, so I just did a search for poll poll watcher. So it's not hyperlinked. So essentially, what you do is you just scroll through until you get to um, uh, the area that gives you the information. I think I went the wrong way. My apologies. Let me go the proper way. That should get us there. So, poll watchers, just like municipal elections or any election, a federal election, you have the ability to observe the process, this election process, right? So, every candidate that is running for LSC should have received 3 poll watcher credential forms to be able to use for themselves, for volunteers, for family throughout the day to observe and ensure that this is an equitable or just a fair process. So in order to do that, your principal at the candidate forum should have given you like I said, each candidate should have gotten their poll watcher forms, again, 3 each for each candidate, that allows you to go in and observe the process. There's been a couple of parents across the city that have reached out around concerns. They just want to ensure the fairness. And so they've reached out and asked, like, how can we verify that one person, one vote, as an example? And it is definitely they're running as a slate. So our suggestion to them was, of the 3 forms that you all have, there's 5 of you. Find your volunteers who can observe and stay in the poll, maybe give everyone an hour shift, right? A volunteer can go in, sit for that hour. The next person comes in until you have the entirety of the election day covered. All right. That's my little overview of like what poll watchers are, y'all. What questions do you have? What do we want to highlight here?
Oh, go ahead, Kendra.
About students voting. I know that they have to be 17. But can a student, I know that students vote for other students, but can a student vote for a parent or community rep in their school if they meet the age requirement?
Charlie, you want to answer that? You want me to?
Restate that question.
So I know I said a lot of so say like my son is a student, senior, just turned 18, wants to vote. He's currently still a student. Can he vote for a parent or community rep?
So, as a student, he would only be able to vote for the student rep. Now, that is only at the school that he attends. He is welcome to vote at any neighborhood school. He is old enough. You have to be 17 years or older. And then he can vote for community and parent reps at his community schools.
Just not at his school.
Just not at his school. It's one vote, like it's one vote per person. So he wouldn't be able to vote for a student and then also, for parents. It's 2 different. I don't want to call it divisions, but it's students, and then it's it's staff, and then it's parents and community members. And then something that I just wanted to add that is random. I know that we're probably going to get to it, but we know that up to 6, there are 6 parent slots and there are 2 community slots. Parents and community members can vote for up to 5 people, so a mix of those 2 demographics.
So you can't go in there and say I'm gonna vote for whoever you want to. You gotta only vote for 5.
You can only vote for 5. Teachers cannot vote for anyone but staff. Even if they have children that attend that school, they're a teacher, so they can only vote for teachers. Is that correct?
That's correct. So remember, and then the only caveat that I would add to that is anyone who is employed by the board is eligible to vote at their neighborhood school. So a teacher who is employed at their school would only vote for staff. However, if they have a neighborhood school in their community where they are a community member, they can vote at those schools. We can look at that too, around how folks, so that sounds a little bit confusing. Yes, staff only vote for staff. The only exception is they can vote externally at other schools based on their home address.
So you can only vote in one school, vote one time at one school.
Correct.
And vote for.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
While we're here, should we talk a little bit about the voting?
Yes.
So, because I think Chanella mentioned that there are 5 votes. You have up to 5 votes. So say there's a slate of, say, 6 parents and 2 community members. Like, do y'all have some suggestions on how folks can split? Like, how do you ensure that you only have up to the 5 votes, and how people can split that voting?
I don't have a suggestion that I would tell people to follow, but when it's a slate, no, I'm not going to give my suggestion because I don't want people to follow my lead on it. But go ahead, China.
It is just a suggestion. It is just an idea. But if it were me, I would definitely, if there was a slate, I would definitely vote for the 2 community members, and then figure out those 4 parents. Yeah, because I feel like if you give all the parents those 5 votes and don't vote for any community members, that's kind of also defeating the purpose of them running as a slate. So yeah, that's what that is just what I can do. You can vote for 1 community member, 4 parents, 2 community members, 4 parents, 1 community member, 5 parents. No, how many votes do we get? 5 votes. So 2 community members and 3 parents, or 1 community member and 4 parents.
Mm-hmm. And I would also say that sometimes slates, like I ran on a slate back, a few cycles back, where we had 6 parents and 2 community reps. And we canvassed to ensure that the east side of our boundary voted for slate A, which had 3 parents and 2 community members. And then we broke up our boundary to the west. We canvassed with graphics or flyers for slate B with the 2 community members. So it balanced out those, like you're saying, Chanella, the 3-2 rule, because you're right. We wanted, no matter what, for our community reps to get those votes as well.
Now I'm going to ask a question that I should probably know. And it might sound a little off key, because when you run as a slate, that don't guarantee that everybody from your slate get on, right?
Correct. It does not. We did run. We ran as a slate when I first got on the LSC, and there was 1 person that didn't make it. But and while we were just having this discussion, I thought about it, and the community, we only had 2 community members. Like, we kind of messed up, but also we were new. We didn't have spaces where we could go and talk this out, because what we should have done was, when we canvassed, had people vote for at least 5 parents, because there were only 2 community members running, and those 2 community members were in our slate. So yeah, we should have been able to get 5 parents on, but we were only able to get 4. But yeah, just because you run in a slate doesn't mean that everyone in that slate will get picked or win a seat.
Yeah, and then one of the things, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of work, right? To it depends on the school. There are some schools where one vote will get you elected. Some schools are not. A majority of our schools are not contested. So it's important to say this out loud. You need at least one vote to be voted on the LSC. I know sometimes there's a notion where it's like, oh, I am running uncontested. I don't need to vote. You actually need that one vote to be duly elected to the LSC. Go vote for yourself. Um, and vote for others. Start having conversations with others who might not be on your slate, but may share the same values, right? I would like to assume, while it's rarely safe to do so, that everyone who's running for LSC will center the needs of the youth, children, our babies, our future leaders, in their decision making, right? And so knowing that, I feel confident, that even if you might not have a majority of your slate elected, that you want to be able to have a healthy working relationship, um, when you all take your seats in July. I'll pause there.
And then I just wanted to go back and add that while, as a parent or community member, you do have 5 votes, you don't have to use them all. If you want to make sure that you don't mark 6 individuals, but if you are not sure about the candidates, there are only maybe 3 that you're sure about. You can do that as well. That is the point. We want people in these seats that have our children's best interests at heart. So yeah, if you get up there and there are some names that you are probably not sure of, or that are iffy, you don't have to use all of those 5 votes.
Well said. One thing that is really interesting, I don't see it in the election guide when we have gone through it previously, but if you see, or I'm sorry, when you go to vote on election day, you want to make sure you have the proper marking on the ballot. We have seen spoiled ballots, which means that it was not considered a valid vote. So also, while your ballot will be deemed spoiled if you vote for, um, um, if you exceed the 5 votes, you should also know that you need to have an intersecting line. Just plan to vote with an X. There should be signage in the voting space in the school when you go on report card day, whether it's at the elementary school tomorrow or high schools on Thursday. It's usually a sign on the wall that tells you what an acceptable marking is, to keep it safe and to ensure that your vote counts for the candidate you want to see lead, help co-lead, and co-govern the school. Just plan to vote with an X. A little bit of free game there. Let's get into ID. Who wants to talk a little bit about the ID requirements if you are a parent, how it's a little bit different when you're a parent and or if you're voting as a community member?
I can't see that little bitty writing.
Okay. I'm happy to share if that's better. Y'all wouldn't chime in. Hopefully
Go
that's
ahead. Yeah, we can chime in.
okay. Definitely would love to hear y'all's voice, and I can stay on mute a little bit too. So jump in. So acceptable forms of ID. Just to keep this simple, if you are a CPS parent, you are on the school's alpha roster. Having an enrolled child in the building, there's a list that will be available in the voting poll that identifies you as a parent in the school. Remember, you're going in there for a report card pickup. Parents who are on the child's student record will be able to use that as at least one form of their identification. Any other or the second form of ID can be from this list. Please make sure you have it. There are rarely, I should say rarely, I've heard of schools that do voting on a case by case because they know a parent well. However, the rules state that they should be checking a second form of ID. Please just get a quick scan. We're going to drop a link to this guide in the chat so that you can have this with you if it is of concern or just to remind yourself. So it just says that parent voters are required to provide at least one of the forms of ID. And the other is, of course, sort of your name is enrolled because, documented and will be on a form that you are a parent. However, if you're a community member, you must have two forms of ID to vote at the LSC in the LSC election. Any combination of what you see on the screen is acceptable. Is there anything else that we want to mention and lift up here, y'all?
To go vote.
Hello.
Please go vote. Please, please, please go see these schools, especially the schools in your community, as your community, and vote. Yep, go vote.
I don't. Did we show how you can look up and see what schools are in your area?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
I actually don't have that up, so give me just a moment to do a quick. This is how you do it.
Okay.
You would look up the CPS LSC election map. I feel like you went over this in a previous section, but I'm glad that we have the opportunity to go through this now that the elections are upon us. All right. So here we have the LSC election map. We'll also drop this in the chat. This is such a useful tool because it allows you to search pretty much what you need to know for elections. Remember, LSC elections are citywide elections. Just like any other municipal or federal elections, if you have an address, you can vote in the school's attendance or what's called a voting boundary. Those are usually the selective enrollment and magnet schools because they have a larger or a citywide boundary. You can vote. So this tool allows you to enter your home address to show you which school you can vote and how many schools you can vote. Let's use an address from the best neighborhood in the city.
Inglewood?
Yes, ma'am. All right, so we'll use 65th and Winchester. So if you lived at 65th and Winchester, you would enter your address, hit search, and the results will show you that you can vote at Christopher, Davis, O'Toole, which is my childhood school, or Southside High School. So based on this address or your address, and we'll drop this in the chat, you will be able to see all of the schools where you can vote tomorrow and Thursday. So this is primarily helpful for community members. Again, based on where you live. I think earlier, Chanela, you were given the example of, or Kendra, I forget, the example of a teacher. They will vote in their school as a staff, but based on where they live, if that teacher lived at 65th and Winchester, they could vote here as community voters. One person, one vote at each school. Let's say that you're not a parent in the school. Most likely if you're a parent, you probably know the parents who are running for LSC at your school. But if you're a community member, this tool will allow you to see who's running at the school. So for Christopher Elementary, again, they will be holding their election tomorrow at 50th and Artesian. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. They have 4 community reps running for 2 seats. and they have 8 parents running for 6 of those seats. So whomever achieves or amasses the majority or plurality, that one kind of confuses me. Get the most votes will be seated in those 2 for the community and 6 for the parent. Is there anything that we should cover here, Charnella, Kendra?
No, but I just did want to add, we do know that a lot of schools are doing like half day virtual, half day in person for report card pickup. But just remember that the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So the schools should be open, and I just definitely wanted to highlight that. I know that my children's school, they're in person. Parent conferences are later in the evening, but I'm going to go in the morning to vote. So yeah, I just want people to be aware of that the schools should be open.
Yes. And let's see, Kendra, you have anything here before we look at another example or just move on?
No, not for that.
Okay. Cool. All right. So you all should see, I don't know that this comes across in X, but if you are watching, joining us today, it's good to see so many of y'all out there. If you are joining us today on Facebook and or YouTube, you should see that link pop up in the chat. Okay. Let's see. One of the things that you can also do here, so based on your home address, you can see where you can vote. If you have a address in the city of Chicago, you can vote in the LSC elections. Oftentimes when we're out canvassing, folks are like, "Oh, I didn't know that I can vote. I thought it was only for parents or people who have a connection to the school." Again, the example I gave earlier about a community member who was donating to our school's campus beautification was just a neighbor and really interested in what was happening in the school. It behooves you to engage and build relationships. And this was an example of when we were canvassing to run on the LSC. We knocked on this person's door, and they were a former educator and very passionate about being connected to schools. So again, your blessings are getting out and talking to the folks that are in your school's attendance and voting boundary. That includes the business district. When we hosted virtual, we held a 63 boycott film and hosted Miss Rosie Simpson. All of the food was donated from businesses in the community that we had canvassed or that we held coffee meetups, right? So again, just a little shameless plug to get beyond those school walls because a lot of support and solidarity might be out there for you. So this tool is also good just to share a little quick thing that I think is important. I think we've shared about this before. Raise Your Hand released a transparency and access, sort of list of demands to the district over the last year and a half. And some of the things that we see them now sharing is really great. Remember I said, if the community knows when they can join your school LSC meeting, they will show up. This is an example of that. If you live in Christopher's boundary, you now can see that their next LSC meeting is on the 19th at 1 p.m. So this is an example of information that wasn't previously available. And we really wanted to make this in a mandate as we see a majority of our schools on our south and west sides lack this transparency. So I'm really happy to see that a lot of schools are starting to add this in. The next step would just to be to contact the school to see where that meeting is going to be held. I think that's about, again, I will drop this link in the chat as well. What else, ladies, should we talk about in terms of the election?
to go out and vote in your local school council election tomorrow and Thursday.
Same.
Be a part of the change that we are looking for. Let me say it again.
Absolutely. So one of the other, I think, things that we were thinking about touching on before we move to wrap up is if you have any questions about any questions at all. I think, Chanel, if you want to talk a bit about how folks can get in touch with you over the next day or two, how you plan to engage. If people have questions, concerns, how they can contact you.
Yeah. So, I can I always forget the email. So sorry, had to pull it up real quick. But I am here to offer whatever support that I can to anybody, parents, community members, students, anyone that has any questions about this voting process, this election process, what's to come after the election. We'll be speaking about that in some upcoming teaching and Tuesdays as well. But I can be reached at, my first name is Chinella, CHINELLA, at ilraiseyourhand.org. And I will, I'll also be having some office hours. So you can always go to our website and look under events to see when I'll be in the office, and you can drop in. We can have a cup of coffee and just talk through things if you need to. I did want to, I think that's it. Yeah, y'all got my email. Please reach out if there's anything that I can do to help you guys. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so you just want to go to Raise Your Hands website under Get Involved. And then you can click on events and see what we have going on. You can see the office hours and the LSC trainings, the parent leaders meeting. I'll let Kendra finish.
So we do have a LSC with the budget just being released. I think it is a great idea to attend at the LSC budget season training that we have. Believe that date is April 16th, Natasha.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And that information is on our website. I encourage current members and members that will be elected on tomorrow and Thursday to attend these trainings. We also have a parent leaders meeting coming this month, April 30th. The location is to be announced, but we have a wonderful session when we have parent leader meetings. So we also encourage all parents, community caregivers to attend these meetings. And in our closing thoughts, I'm sorry, I did not give the time for the LSC budget training. Is at 5:30. It will be held virtually, so I encourage people to attend. That's a great opportunity to learn with the budget being just recently released. Again, the link is in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. Closing thoughts.
if I could add before you give your closing thoughts, I just wanted to say that these trainings are not only for people that are on the LSC or about to be on the LSC. It's for just anybody in the community as well. Like we said, we want everyone's participation, and so these trainings would be helpful so that when you do go into those LSC meetings, you know what's going on. So you don't have to be a LSC member if it's just something that you are just interested in and want to figure out how these things work. This space is for you as well. And that was it. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Cool, y'all. Yeah, as we move to wrap, I know that we have a question in the chat. I want to make sure we get to that. But before we do, listen, we talk about this. I said this earlier. We really understand that when we can share with each other the training, what's in the policy, so that there is not necessarily an argument about the things. You have the Illinois School Code and the LSC reference guide to be able to, use a keyword search to look up the things that you need to know. Maureen brings up an awesome example of a little bit of what we call free game. A good tip and a best practice. Somebody want to read this out loud for those that might not be looking at the screen?
I can. Maureen said, a thought that I would share, a very smart parent once told me, new LSC should ask for an audit of the school budget, which would let everyone know the budget the new local school council had going forward and would close out the prior LSC budget. And that is definitely free game. Thank you for that.
Listen, Maureen, yes. One of the things that I learned on the LSC was to, sorry about that, was to request an audit. When you listen, the budget is the LSC's fiduciary duty to ensure that there is integrity in the budget that we see every year in the CPS OIG's report, that there is gross what would you call misappropriation of funds. And when we know there's corruption, that is theft, and that is taking a resource from our children's ability to get what they need, and that's not okay. So the LSC does have the authority to request copies of the internal audit. I can just tell you from experience of what I have seen personally, what I have supported LSC members with is you should request a book to floor and a floor to book type an audit. So that's an audit that goes multiple ways, right? Which can catch different things. In an example of what I have seen, when you do that sort of detailed audit, we saw what amount to gross misappropriation of funds that ultimately led to, in several instances, accountability, whether it be whoever was responsible, but at least in 3 occasions, an school principal being removed from the building after an investigation. So that's the extreme of it. But in the interim, it tells you how well the school is functioning, and again, how we are meeting the needs of the young people, because that budget should be aligned with the CIWP without process gap. So this reference guide and in the LSC training reminds LSCs that unless prohibited by law, LSCs can request a copy of that audit. I just did a keyword search of audit. It's in the reference guide at least 14 times. What it tells you is what an audit of records looks like. There's a CPS office that handles audits for the school. And so if an LSC is, the first step would of course be to develop a relationship and ask that principal. But if you have to go beyond that, it is listed here in the LSC's reference guide, the phone number And if you just search the CPS sort of directory, you can also get an email address for this office to share with you on the internal audit. To go forward, I can just say that there was a pause during the pandemic of audits, just due to the pandemic and the limitations that it created. So we're finding that as LSCs are asking for these audits, they're realizing their last audit was 2019. And so now that we are sort of, I guess, rounding the curve of the pandemic and those limitations, a lot of schools are requesting them and are getting audits within 60 days. So request it, even if you don't have previous ones, you should have a good one. And it's also a good time to assess what maybe you need to do as an LSC and focus on to close process gaps. Okay, that was a little bit long-winded, but thanks, Maureen, for bringing that forward. One other thing that I wanted to share here is, again, you don't have to know everything. Just have this guide that you can do a keyword search. So I'm just searching budget as schools just received their school budget. Oops. I'm not sure what happened there. As schools just receive their school budget, it's good to go back to the reference guide to see what is required of the school principal to share with the LSC and what the LSC role is in the budget cycle, right? So we know that CPS released the budgets to the school principals yesterday, which means in very short order, the principals will be creating a budget in line with the CIWP goals and then presenting it to the LSC, but also hosting a public meeting for the public to be, and parents specifically, to be able, and educators, of course, right? All of the school's primary, stakeholders, deserve to understand where the school is in terms of meeting the CIWP goals. And again, as they move to create the school year 25 budget, that it aligns with that. And there's an opportunity to ask those questions. So again, just searching by budget, this tells you during the school year, the principal provides all of the sort of drafts of the CIWP, amendments, and the school budget well in advance of the meetings. That happens on a monthly basis. And then during the LSC calendar year, particularly where we are now, looking at April and May, the LSC conducts public meetings to present the proposed CIWP and budget for the next year to the public with an opportunity for public comment, right? So oftentimes we hear that LSCs feel pressure there's a short deadline, we have to get it approved. In the policy codified by the state school code says that LSCs must do these things. It is not optional. And unless there is, I apologize with that spread there, but the LSCs, there's no exception to the rule that LSCs follow the calendar, which again breeds transparency and again extends the opportunity for parents who are not on the LSC to bring their lived experience to those decision-making spaces. So again, that's why it's important to ensure that there's a process for participation. So I just want to skip ahead. I apologize for the clicks, but there was earlier on our social media, we talked about, I'm just showing you all the things that relate to budget. Maybe I should use my scale here. I believe this is where we get into budgeting for progress. Maybe is that it? It talks about, of course, the CIWP. We looked a little bit earlier about where to, find the school's CIWP, even if you weren't a part of the process. It's a public document. So just wanting to just remind you that the LSC reference guide shares with us that these things are deeply, deeply connected. All right, I've said a lot there. Y'all want to jump in? Any questions that come up for y'all as we look at this last session and then move to close if there are no other thoughts or questions.
None for me.
Not for me.
Okay. I feel like I'm on a little bit of a soapbox, but it's important, right? This is
It
like
is.
a little bit of, the information that we don't know keeps us from what is possible. So I value that we are all on the same page to get our children what they need. It's important to know where you can tap into the resource. So again, I just did a keyword search of budget. This is the key part here that tells you, even if you're not on the LSC, we're going to drop this link in the chat, to be able to help remind the LSC to ask, hey, when's that CIWP meeting going to be, right? How do we help to prepare for the next school year's budget? This is key for school year 25, as this is the first year that it is a departure from the student-based budgeting that we have long said hurt and harmed and further disinvested from the schools and students and young people that need it the most, right? So in this reference guide, it talks about the LSC's role in the budget. And it also gets into the LSC's role for preparing for the next school year budget. So here we are in the March through June sort of bucket of this, process. The schools will receive their proposed dollar amounts. Again, that happened yesterday. It first goes to principals. Principals will coordinate with the LSCs, or the district will coordinate and share out with the chair and the LSC members. What we know, again, we are reiterating here, the budget is developed to support that CIWP. LSCs present that CIWP and budget to the school community. And then ultimately, LSCs approve the CIWP if there are any changes to that CIWP. The cycle is a little bit off this year in terms of CIWPs were approved in or around September 15th of 23. So these CIWPs, they might have changed. You might have adds to your goals, given on this sort of, rounding ourselves out. There are just so many things depending on the school that might have been added to your CIWP since September. But those things are approved together. And then the budget is then formally presented, submitted by the principal. And then the principal certifies whether the LSC, of course, in a functioning, high functioning school, or not functioning school, but LSC that has its quorum, all of these steps are not optional and are quite honestly, required. So again, we'll drop this in the chat. I think it's good. While this isn't module training, we are hosting, as Kendra said, module training next week on budgets. You should, if you are an LSC member or candidate, or just a parent or community member interested, you should click the link in the chat and join us next week on the 16th at 5:30 as we dig deep into the budgets, particularly how there's, what you should anticipate based on the current budgets that have been released to schools. So again, just want to, share that there are steps that really can walk an LSC. If you are planning to do any of this, it is good to know what to anticipate in the process. All right, off the soapbox here. We're going to, again, drop this in the chat so that folks can, again, engage in the process and know what to expect. All right, who wants to, I'm gonna pass it over to y'all to, close us up with what we always call a best practice, a tip, or something that we just want folks to food for thought. Wrap up.
So again, I will say, across the screen, I am the LSC parent organizer. So you can connect with me as well as Chinella at KendraILRaiseYourHand.org. You can connect with me there. And go and vote. Vote in your community. Vote at your children's school. Vote. go and be a part of what the changes we want to see in our schools. And I think so food for thought. And the one thing that stuck out to me today that Natasha said is about that check mark. It might not sound really important, but just put an X. Do not put a check. Don't put a line. Put an X to make sure that that vote counts. That's all I got. Thank you all for today. Chanela.
Same, yeah, go vote. Please feel free to take advantage of the links that were dropped in the chat and look and see what neighborhood you're in. We can't keep complaining about what's going wrong and what and we're not doing anything about it. So this is your opportunity. Food for thought. The schools are open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Elementary schools tomorrow, high schools on the 11th. So you should have just get there when you can. Get there when you can. Please exercise your right to vote.
Love it. I can't say anything different. Y'all already covered it. I would just, really stress that oftentimes folks believe that because they don't have or feel like they have a direct role in the school that they don't participate. Again, the link in the chat will tell you based on your address, you'll find that you might have up to 7, 8 schools that you can vote, in the LSC election. It really does go a long way. Oftentimes, if you don't know folks, the candidates will be at the school, sort of, shaking hands, making sure that they can introduce themselves for your vote. So sometimes you can really go to those schools and meet and have, a conversation with folks who are vying for those seats. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to Kendra, Chinella, who are standing by to support y'all. We feel like this is one of those all hands on deck situations where each one teach one. And we are looking forward to supporting you all through this LSC election and beyond. So Kendra, do you want to just touch on right before we move to wrap up on those dates again for the upcoming events and how people can tap in?
Absolutely. So next week, on April 16th at 5:30 p.m., we have a virtual LSC module training on budget, and we encourage everyone to come. We also have parent leaders meeting coming April 30th. That leaders meeting location is to be determined, so keep a watch out for that. And I think that's all we have coming up. Am I missing something? I think that's it for now. But we have a bunch of stuff lined up, so just keep in tune with Raise Your Hand. We are excited about engaging with our parents, so stay tuned.
All right, y'all. Take care. Be well. Stay healthy. Peace. Have a good day.
Peace.